Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. I want to make the case for why it's possible and reasonable to speculate that the price of XRP could absolutely rocket into the stratosphere even if Ripple ends up losing in the SEC v. Ripple case. Attorney Jeremy Hogan, in looking at what happened with LBC, the library credit token, and the SEC v. library case based on a remedies hearing just the other day, he brought it up too. And he's kind of saying, what does this mean for XRP? And so I'll share with you what Attorney Hogan had to say on that. And actually, the blockchain backer responded in with his perspective as well. And I'm not the only one that's thinking this. Attorney Hogan is, the blockchain backers, all sorts of others. It's just, although we don't know for sure what's going to happen, just pointing out it's reasonable to speculate that even if Ripple gets a bad ruling anyway, that in terms of what happens for XRP holders, we could really be sitting pretty. And if that ends up being the case, and if you're talking about XRP back on exchanges, especially, my God, having exposure to XRP right now, wow. See, but that's the risk, because if it doesn't go well, what happens? But I'm willing to take that bet. So I want to share with you information on this. And here's a headline from the Daily, how it reads as follows. A low-cap crypto asset surges 219% after a contentious SEC decision. Could XRP do the same? But before going further ado, and be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Okay, so again, think about this. We learned in November the outcome in the SEC v. library case. The SEC won, library lost. The price of LBC at that time, it plummeted to whatever degree, I can't recall off the top of my head, but it did go down, and I reported on it at the time. So now, just a couple days ago, and I reported on this as well in case you had missed, I'll get you all caught up to speed, but there was a separate hearing having to do with remedies, and upon the conclusion of that, it became pretty clear to people that things actually looking pretty good for the long-term viability of the LBC token, even though library, it looks like it's going to cease to exist, shut down operations, has no money left, it's been destroyed by the SEC. But the coin, LBC, jumped 219%. And so that's why I'm saying, what do you think is going to happen for the price of XRP when this is all said and done? Even if Ripple loses. And that's why even if the market gets spooked, immediately, say there's a headline, Ripple loses, I'm going to sit tight personally. I'm not telling you what to do. You buy or sell or hold. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I personally, even upon what initially sounds like a disaster ruling, even if the price of XRP starts plummeting, I'm going to be hold on, let's digest this. For me, I want to see what happens, because even if it's a bad ruling, what is being said about the token itself by Judge Torres, and when it gets to the remedies portion, is there still opportunity there based on what we know to this point in the summary judgment? Because I'm telling you, in the SEC v. library case, it seemed pretty clear that, or at least the way it was being interpreted, and I think it's reasonable to interpret it like this, it seemed like the token itself perhaps, and perhaps secondary market transactions for LBC would be included in this decision against library, which would be bad because then you just can't use it in the United States. But then you get to remedies and the judge says something different here. So that's why I'm saying, even if we get that scary disaster headline, Ripple loses, if that happens, and I'm not convinced that will happen, but even if it happens, and it could, I'm going to sit there and hold even if price starts plummeting, because I'm not going to make an emotional decision. I'm going to take in data, let the speculators do what they do, and if it's disastrous and it goes to zero, fine. But I just don't believe that's going to happen. I really don't believe that's going to happen. I think the dust will settle, and then there's going to be a path forward. I'm strongly anticipating that. So anyway, take a look at this article. Library's native token LBC is in the midst of a parabolic run-up following new developments relating to its battle with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The file sharing and payments protocol lost a court case with the SEC in November of last year after a federal judge ruled that it violated securities laws when it sold LBC. Library's battle with the SEC has captured the attention of Ripple and XRP supporters as their own community continues to weather a similar battle with the regulator, which accused Ripple Labs of issuing XRP as an unregistered security in late 2022. After winning the lawsuit, the SEC hoped to get clarity from the judge that LBC qualified as an unregistered security both during Library's direct sale of the token as well as secondary sales. However, The judge has reportedly stated that his ruling against LBRY does not apply to secondary market sales, implying that LBC is not a security. Yeah, and so they're saying that reportedly, and that's fine because it is reportedly, but it's reportedly, the information is reportedly coming from an individual known as Attorney John Deaton, who is serving as amicus in the remedies portion of the SEC v. LBRY case on behalf of one Naomi Brockwell. And he told us explicitly what happens. That the court transcript will at some point in the future be released. I'm looking forward to reading that myself, and I'll be happy to cover it on the channel, of course, so we can see exactly what was said. But the judge was actually pushing against the SEC. He's actually genuinely sympathetic to the plight of people that are just innocently operating within secondary markets, having nothing to do with LBRY. Anyway, piece continues. John Deaton, who represented XRP holders in Ripple's lawsuit as an amicus and also spoke in court on behalf of LBRY, that's incorrect. It was on behalf of Naomi Brockwell, not on behalf of LBRY. But anyway, details. It's crypto media. He said in a recent video update that the judge clearly stated that his ruling did not apply to secondary market sales. Quote, "Then he looked at me and said, 'Amicus, I'm going to make it clear that my order does not apply to secondary market sales.' He goes, 'So that should satisfy you, right?' I stood up and I said, 'Great. If you would consider some language on how the token itself is not a security,' and he smiled and said, 'Well, I'm a minimalist.' And so he left it open there. But when you think about it, if he's saying secondary market sales aren't in play, then the token itself can't be a security. If the token itself is a security, then that means whenever it's sold, it would be a security," end quote. So you can see how the logic follows right there. That's why Attorney Deaton said what he said. Based on basically what the judge is ruling, it would be even better fine if you get the explicit, vocalization of the token itself as a security. But if you just understand what he's stating, it literally means the same thing. The token itself can't be the security, or else every single transaction, even on secondary markets, would be. So the fact that's not the case means the token cannot be. And that is why LBC rocketed. And that's why I'm saying, even when it comes to XRP, this is why I'm going to hold on. Even if we get a bad, scary headline, like you got in the LBRY case, it went down, down, down until it didn't, because then this happened, and then LBC rocketed. Piece continues. At time of writing, LBC is up over 140% in the last 3 days, and at one point was up over 219%. 219%, folks, as it skyrocketed from a low of 0.0103 cents to 0.0329 cents. It currently has a market cap of only 17.8 million, and it is still down at 98% from its all-time highs despite the... Yeah, well, that's the case for so many altcoins today. That's very normal in terms of being down from all-time high. But in terms of the rally, that's unique to LBC. Which is why, again, I'm saying, when it comes to what's happening with XRP, I'm very optimistic for the future. And we know without question, we don't have to be attorneys to understand, the SEC is on the wrong side of the law, because it's never the asset itself that is the security. So if the asset itself is never the security, then it can't be, should not, well, certainly should not be, ruled, deemed to be some sort of security. And market participants like exchanges shouldn't be afraid to list it, since it's never the asset itself. But we have to go through this messy process first to get to that point. And so attorney Jeremy Hogan, he noticed this price spike for LBC, and attorney Hogan tweeted out the following. Here, I'll make this chart full screen. It's the LBC chart. And he said, "Below is the LBC weekly chart, up 100%. And LBRY completely lost the SEC lawsuit and is going into bankruptcy. What does this mean vis-a-vis XRP? Asking for a friend," smiley face. And so we can think about this. LBRY lost the case, going bankrupt, and the token rockets. How about that? Can you imagine if this were something where it was like a more traditional case? I mean, there would be a lot of things that couldn't overlap just based on the technology. But can you imagine there's some sort of accusation against a firm and the stock being sold and the company's going bankrupt and they lost against the SEC and then people want to throw money into it? And I understand at that point, it may not be, if it's off exchanges, maybe they wouldn't be able to anyway, but you get what I'm saying, right? Especially after they lose. But you get what I'm saying. Would the people in such a situation do that? Well, no, of course they wouldn't, because the company's destroyed. This goes to illustrate the point, though, that a token is decentralized. It's got its own ecosystem, which is not dependent necessarily on any one company. And here it's certainly the case, not dependent on LBC, the company. Similar with XRP. You can see how people feel and believe about decentralized cryptocurrencies. So if XRP were ever put in a similar situation, maybe you get some scary price action, some scary headlines, but doesn't it recover if we get some positive news eventually, especially when it comes to the remedies portion? My speculation would be yes, because I acknowledge like Ripple could lose. I'm not saying that I think they should, because well, there's so many reasons, not the least of which is the fact that the SEC, they never even cited any specific transactions, which goes against case precedent dating back 76 years or so, right? Like they didn't cite specific transactions, just everything is. Well, even if you just look at that, it's just ridiculous. They can't even name what the common enterprise is. So I don't see how you get to the point where you're like, yeah, Ripple should lose. Like, I don't see how that makes sense, to be honest with you. And I feel more strongly about that than I did when this started 2 years ago, because I've learned more about the facts and specifics and how securities laws work. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a regular dude. I've learned a lot more about it. And I'm more confident today than 2 years ago. Ripple should outright win. Because the SEC, at a minimum, the SEC, their motion for summary judgment shouldn't pass at a bare minimum. And then somebody named Mr. V wrote to Attorney Hogan in response to it and said, how does something decentralized completely lose? And Attorney Hogan says, maybe what we are seeing is that the market doesn't believe it can, that it can lose. Okay, and that I think is accurate. The market says, screw you, SEC. The LBC token is not LBC. That's what it looks like, right? And the blockchain backer responded to Attorney Hogan, and he said, in response to that tweet, hard to know in terms of what happens. Hard to know, or like why it's doing what it's doing. But what we're likely seeing is speculation that LBC will not be deemed a security in secondary market sales. So people are likely YOLOing in on what is a low volume coin, anticipating it will return to exchanges. Even after 2x price, it's a $14 million cap. Yeah, and so it doesn't take much money flowing in to get a multiplier effect, because there's so little money in it right now. But it's the same mindset. So what's happening here again? Like I've said umpteen million times now in this video, I think people would treat XRP about the same ultimately if it were in a similar situation, and it may not end up in a similar situation. Ripple could have an outright win. And even if Ripple does lose to some degree, it could be maybe it's clear right off the bat that there's some really good news for XRP, and maybe XRP doesn't start plummeting even if Ripple loses. That's possible too. But look, there's going to be, I'm very optimistic there's going to be a path forward. And don't forget, I want to mention this too. You guys remember Kick Interactive and the Kin token? Well, that case settled. It ended in 2021. This is from the SEC, October 21st, 2021. SEC obtains final judgment against Kick Interactive for unregistered offering. And so Kick Interactive lost the case, and then you get to the remedies portion, which is also called settlement. And it wasn't a disaster situation for the Kin token either. There was a path forward for the token even there. In fact, take a look at this portion right here. This is written by the SEC. October 21st, 2020. The final judgment permanently enjoins Kick from violating the registration provisions of Sections 5A and 5C of the Securities Act of 1933. Kick is further required for the next 3 years to provide notice to the Commission before engaging in enumerated future issuances, offers, sales, and transfers of digital assets. Kick will also pay a $5 million penalty. Okay, so there you go. So it wasn't that the Kick Interactive could never sell the Kin token again. There was a path forward even there. Now, that was under different management, let's say, at the SEC. You had Jay Clayton and Bill Hinman and all the other creatures out there. And they're awful. But now you have new management who is even harsher, right? And so they penalized Kick Interactive, but they provided a path forward for that specific instance. But then with LBC, the SEC, their goal was to provide no path forward for LBC. That's what they were seeking. But the judge wasn't having it. And so that's why in his final remedy solution, we'll see when it's published, but he's articulated on the record that no, secondary market transactions not. But again, how did market participants behave when the Kin token got that clarity? Well, over some period of time, and it may have taken months, but if memory serves, I think it went up somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000%. So yeah, I'm going to take this bet here. I'm going to take this bet. The SEC's wrong. I'm stubborn, and I know that I'm right, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. You guys all pretty well feel the same. But the SEC's wrong, and they're terrible. They're full of terrible monsters. That agency, it's a terrible organization. So no, I'm not going to, even if there's a scary headline, I understand XRP is separate from Ripple, period. And the SEC can't, just by decree, even if the United States sides with the SEC and says, yeah, it's the same thing, the rest of the world disagrees. So suck it, Here's an eggplant emoji for you. Enjoy that. Put it in and around your facial region, SEC. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.